My name is Jahkoy. Man, you know I got Saul. We've been rocking, baby. Love.
All right, Jahkoy, welcome back to Canada.
Thank you.
As part of this Kehlani tour right now, you've been hitting the road for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
First of all, of course, let's go back to the early days. Talk about some of your influences. I know Pharrell was one of them.
Yeah, some of my biggest influencers ever is like Kanye West, Pharrell, Andre 3000, Rihanna. Just because these artists, they're creatives that, tapped into their own world. They weren't too bothered about, what had to be the norm or what society said was the standard. So it's like, they came out and they delivered that fresh new, experience to music. So it's like, that's what I want to do in terms of, delivering my piece and my product and my music. So it's like, I'm young, I'm hungry, and I'm excited about, being a part of this whole tour and just, having this whole, experience happen, quite frankly, kind of fast, in sense. Like, I went out to LA and, I went out to chase my dreams. I went out in January. By summer of that year, I had just got signed to Def Jam. And, some of my favorite artists, my favorite influences, are a part of Def Jam history. So it's like, it just brings around that full circle where it's like, I didn't know too much about the background that these creatives were, delivering their music with, and it was just like, to know that now I'm a part of that same history, it just, motivates me to keep going and just keep striving.
Now, before we get into your Def Jam signing, I want to go back to, your time in Toronto. You grew up in Toronto.
Yeah.
I guess talk about building your name in Toronto, especially during that time when Drake was just about to blow up. He wasn't at the level that he is today. So just talk about the grind and, how hard it was for you in Toronto at that time.
Well, when I was in Toronto, I was just, I started making music roughly about at the age of 13. So 13 is like when I started recording music, and I was taking it real serious. And that's what it meant, a lot to me. And it still does. It means the same to me till now. It's 10 years later, and it's like I'm actually doing, everything that I've wanted to do then today. They say it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And I don't feel like I fully made it, but it's like, we're still working towards getting there. This is just the journey to the destination, and being in Toronto, growing up, it was fun. It was amazing, and it definitely taught me everything that I know about, music in terms of the music that I grew up listening to, and my surroundings per se, to help me grow as a being. And so it's like, when I was in Toronto, I almost felt like things weren't really happening for me, even as much as I felt like I was progressing, and I felt like I needed to go out to discover more about myself that I could only discover somewhere else. Because I feel like I knew everything about Toronto. I had all my friends, all my family. I knew my way around the whole city. And it was just time to go discover something else. And my first thought was I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna go to the United States. My first move was gonna go to Atlanta. I had family out there, so I went out to go check out my uncle. And I spent maybe a month and a half out there, and I made a lot of friends. And I absorbed the Atlanta culture. What I love so much about the Atlanta culture is that everybody's super supportive. And everybody's just if someone's creating, everybody's down to work and networking. Make a masterpiece. Everybody wants to come together and collaborate. And that's what I love so much about being out there. But if I felt the time that I was spending out there, it was I learned that part as an experience, but it just didn't have the full package that I was looking for. So it's like when I spent time in Atlanta, I was like, man, my SoundCloud was getting a bit of attention, at the time. So it's let's just try to maneuver, my way around some of the places that my music is pretty popular. So it's LA was another spot that I felt I could go out to. And I had a friend named Andrew hit me up on Twitter, and he was like, yo, if you ever come out to LA, you got a place to crash. And I was just all right, cool. I'm not gonna take that opportunity for granted. It's I want to be somewhere, and I feel like this is not where I need to be. So I ended up going out to LA. And around that same time, I wasn't in school, I wasn't working, and it was really tough for my family to see me just I guess in their minds would be kind of struggling, And even in a sense too, I felt like I was struggling, because I felt like I wasn't getting to where I was trying to be. And I have cousins that are my age that are like graduating university and going on with their lives, like to start their careers, and I'm just still here at the house. So it was like one thing where my grandma, she was just like, if you want to really do this music thing, you really have to like take it there. You have to go and do whatever your heart tells you need to do. And one thing led to another, and I was like, I'm going to LA. I didn't tell anybody I was going. I just went.
Right.
So I went, and I booked a one-way there, and it was just like a crazy experience. My buddy Andrew picked me up from the airport, and I was like at his house, just gonna figure it out from there. And within 5 days of being in LA, Jada Smith reaches out to me.
Right.
And then we start linking up, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, I get introduced to everybody. I feel a part of, the movement that they have going, the Misfits. And then we start, like collaborating and putting together our creatives together and, making a group called 1234 Creations.
Yeah.
And through that, it's like, I made records with Willow and Daniel D. Artis and Dylan. Like everybody, we're just all linking up and just and having fun and creating, and just having that whole LA experience. It definitely gave me my purpose, and I felt like I was finding my purpose, and that to me was like heaven, and that's where California heaven comes in.
Yep.
And at the time it was just like the best thing that ever happened. Like I took that extra risk, I went the extra mile, and my heart believed that's where I needed to be.
Right.
And look at now, like we're on tour with Kehlani right now. You got LMA in the other room, everybody's having a good time.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. Now, I mean, just going back to the Toronto situation, I've spoken to other Canadian R&B artists such as Melanie Fiona,
Sick.
Glenn Lewis, and they kind of said the same thing, that they kind of had to leave Toronto in order to make it.
Yeah.
Do you kind of feel like that as well? Because obviously now it's a different age. There's SoundCloud, there's the internet, and that's how you can build your buzz. Back then there wasn't that, so you kind of had to. But how do you think your career would have turned out if you had just stayed in Toronto?
I felt like I feel like you don't have to leave the city to make it. That's not true.
Right.
But I feel like if you want to become a really good artist, you definitely have to be willing to get out there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You have to want to go and discover things about yourself. You can only discover it in new environment. And it's like if you stay in the same places, there's no change. It's like there's nothing really you can learn. You know what I'm saying? And in this life, it's like as we grow, we it's like inevitable to learn. We have to keep absorbing and becoming. And so, I feel like just new environment, just definitely you could go back home.
Yeah.
Go back home. Home is home. And for the most part, I feel like traveling is definitely something that helps in terms of creating.
Yep. Now, as I was mentioning off the camera, we actually posted a mixtape from you back in 2013, and that was kind of like the early stages of you switching into more of that singing R&B realm.
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned earlier you were rapping a little bit prior to that. Just talk about that transition a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, was that just an effortless transition, or did you kind of have to work on that?
Man, the transition from rapping to singing was definitely like it was tough because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Because I had only known rapping to be not rapping per se, but just like spoken word per se. It's like I wrote everything as a poem. Like everything I wrote was just poems, and I rapped them, And so it's like with everything that I was doing then, I guess I was getting a lot off my chest that was a little bit of aggressive because I had a bit of a rough upbringing.
Yeah.
And, I feel like that time was the best time that I could get all those things off my chest so that I could, lead into the next stages of, music per se, or like my experience with music. And at the time too, it was like, I started like, having a crush on this girl. And that's really how it started. It just got me like, I wanted to impress her. I knew I could make music. And all I felt like, I needed to like impress her with the love song.
Right.
And, love songs are cool when people are rapping, but it's even more doper when someone's singing it, So it's like, that's when I jumped into it and I was like, I don't know how to sing. And I still feel like I'm learning. I'm in my early stages of singing. I've only been singing since 2014 and here we are. It's 2017 right now. It's like, and it's like, I'm learning also with I have a vocal coach now, and with my vocal coach, I'm learning to like control my voice and understand that singing is like it's a breathing technique.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was definitely a tough transition
Yeah.
because the two are completely different things to like deal with, and man, I love both and I still do both, and for the most part I'll never stop.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, here we are now, and we've made it to like I guess to say the next level to where music is gonna take me.
Yep. Give me one second. Now, you were talking about the transition from rapping to singing. That was hard on you, but how was it embraced by, your fans at the time who probably only knew you from the rapping and then you just started singing? How was that transition like?
It was interesting. I mean, when I stopped rapping, I went by when I was rapping, I went by another name.
Okay.
So I went by the name Raheem, which is my given name in my family.
Yep.
And when I did the transition, when I rebranded myself from Raheem to Jahkoy, I didn't really tell. Like I put a tweet out there just before I did.
Yep.
Before I changed it was my Twitter handle at the time. So that's where I had like I guess my fans.
Right.
And or supporters to say.
Yeah.
And I had them mostly stacked on Twitter and Facebook. And so I put out a tweet that I was gonna change my name from Raheem to Jahkoy, and I'm gonna do it like this week. So it was like it was a big switch. A lot of people still don't know.
Yeah.
And I've seen tweets out there where people are like, "Where's Raheem? Like, where's he at?" And I'm just like, "That's a good question." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I just made the switch, and for those that did follow, they're still around. I meet some of them at the shows, which is super awesome.
Yep.
And here we are. We're rocking.
Right. And of course, this is a couple years in the works now. You put out your EP, Foreign Water, last year.
Yeah.
Of course, you had the Rico Love joint on there,
Yeah.
California Heaven. I guess just talk about the creative process and the mindset going into that EP. Because
Yeah.
that was your first major project, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been working on that project since I ever been starting working on music, and with that project to be like to be said, it was like something that I wanted to put forth as an introduction to my creative. So it's like I wanted to introduce people to Jahkoy and what he's capable of, or what he can deliver as a piece of work, and I don't know why I'm talking in third person, but yes, per se, I just want to just deliver that experience of, being a kid from Toronto and going to California to chase his dreams and then bringing it back home to tell the story, and I did that. And when I went back home recently, it was an amazing time. It was great to see everybody, after everything had just, figured themselves out. And here we are. I swear, it feels like a dream sometimes.
Right.
I swear, it does. But, man, for the most part, I never take any day for granted, and always motivated to keep doing more.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's really refreshing with your music. You're talking on real topics. I think love is one of them.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people talk about that anymore.
Not at all.
How important is it for you to be talking on these type of topics?
Very much, because I am I'm the oldest sibling of all. I'm the eldest of all my siblings, and I just want to set a good example too. And it's like a lot of the music that I grew up listening to are some songs that I look back and listen to. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have these songs played at my wedding. So it's like It's one of those things where a lot of those songs don't have that same quality.
Yep.
They only glorify like a one night stand or such, but it's like, man, what we live for is just love eternally, and that's it, and that's what brings us to our full purpose.
Right.
And here we are, man. I love it. We're singing about love. Tonight we sang about love in Vancouver. It was dope.
Right. I think it's really interesting because, of course, you rap, you sing. Where do you see yourself kind of fitting into this music industry that, right now it's so weird. You have a realm of, R&B. Everyone loves R&B. But then you have that trap sound that's going on.
Yeah.
And then you have people who are doing a kind of a combination of both. Where do you see yourself kind of fitting in right
I see
now?
myself in that same realm. Like, wherever people see Kanye, wherever people see Andre 3000, or wherever people see Pharrell, Nike, Google, Walt Disney,
Right.
like wherever they see like some of the greatest, I want to be there.
Right.